All right. So, welcome everyone to You Think You're Listening, but You're Not. My name is Adam Geary, and I'm the founder and owner of Creative Collaborations Coaching and a member of the Givers Gain chapter. Before we begin, a few preliminaries. First, as you heard, the workshop is being recorded and will be posted through BNI, Sazona's educational member education materials. Um, just so you know, only the shared screen with me in it is being recorded, not the participants or the chats. So you do remain anonymous. That said, if you say something verbally in here that it's recorded, but you don't want it shared, please let me know afterwards so I don't select this recording of this workshop to be posted. And I can, because I'll be recording it again when I do it later in the week. I also want you to know that I can't present and monitor the chat at the same time. I just don't have that skill. So you're welcome to use the chat, but while I'm presenting, unless we're engaging each other through the chat, know that your chatting is really with each other and not with me. Um, and if you have something that you want to address to me, unmute and just speak up. All right. I'm happy to be interrupted. I also want you to know, and I'm completely aware that this workshop challenges you to listen through what is, I think, one of the most horrendous listening technologies. It's not lost on me that we're doing this over Zoom, which may be good at extending the reach of a speaker, but it's terrible for listeners. I know this. It's kind of mind-numbing. But I'm asking you to stick with me and know that I appreciate all the work that you're doing to listen through this thing. I'm also aware that I'm not really compensating for you with extra visual stimulation. My PowerPoint slides are kind of minimal and designed really only to signal the main theme being discussed. They aren't particularly informative or designed to do the work of listening and synthesizing for you, which is to say, they're not created to give you the option of reading rather than listening. These are conscious decisions on my part, and we can talk about why I've made them. I understand this to be part of the problem we're diagnosing, but I'm also of mixed minds about my decision in relationship to that. So if you have thoughts about that afterwards, I would really appreciate them. Okay, so let's go. Again, welcome to You Think You're Listening, but You're Not, which honestly is a title I selected months ago for the promotion deadline and long before I sat down to construct this thing. If I were to title this workshop now, it would probably be something more like Distraction is not a personal failing, but here's what we can do about it. My revised title better signals what this workshop is about. This is not an active listening workshop. I'm not going to teach you the skills for durational or active listening like body posture, affirmative behavior cues, or paraphrasing. Instead, what we're going to do today, or what I'm hoping we'll do today, is develop an understanding of the sources of our distraction that disrupt our listening and explore how to release ourselves from those sources in order to concentrate and listen better. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to invite you to do a little bit of self-reflecting. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to write anything down if you don't want. You don't have to put things in the chat right now. Just take some time to uh, look at these questions, think about these questions for yourself, and then we'll come back together and talk through some of them. um, excuse me. So, can you all see them over my head?
Mhm.
Are they all clear enough? Okay, yeah, great. So if you'll take a few minutes and then when you're done, if you could use the react function and raise your hand or put up a thumb, that will let me know that we're ready to go. Of course, all of your reactions went away. Everybody, is anybody need more time? All right, great. So, anybody willing to share a little bit about what brought you to the workshop today? I know there are a lot of Givers Gain people, and you're here to support me, but that's cool too. Other folks, what brought you to the workshop today? You can either unmute or throw some things in chat.
Adam, I'll unmute. I we haven't met and I'm very curious to hear your presentation, but I seem to be quite distracted. I want to be open. I was prepared to be on Zoom today, but we've just arrived in San Diego at an RV park and
Oh
getting
wow.
set up. And I've got my computer, I've got power, I got this and that, but things are not quite working correctly, and I don't feel like I'm going to give my undivided. So, most respectfully, I'm going to step out and sign in again tomorrow when I'm settled in.
Okay.
Uh, and so that's what's distracting me is that I can't give you my undivided. And
Yeah.
wow, I've made an example of myself here.
Thanks, Dina. I appreciate you.
Hey Adam, so I decided to take your workshop today because active listening is crucial for me, especially in my job role. And I know now that you've explained the title better, I'm still eager to learn and see what you've got to show us. That'd be great.
Great. Thanks, Sergio. Glad you're here. Samantha, you have your hand up.
I was going to share a similar, with what I do for a living, it's really important to listen to your clients and to your prospects. And, we kind of live by the rule 80-20, right? Let them talk 80% of the time and maybe you speak 20%. But oftentimes, what I find that distracts us is that we're listening to respond versus listening to understand.
Yeah.
So I'm getting better and better at that. So I'm assuming you're probably going to give me some tricks on that. When you do what you've done for decades, you oftentimes think that you have the solution for your clients, but you're not really listening to what they're really wanting,
Okay.
right? So you're trying to fill in, and then you go, and then like, well, that's not at all what I'm looking for. I want a claims advocacy team, which
Hmm.
we have, but instead of always focusing on price and things like that. So that's why I joined today.
Thanks. Great. Thanks, Samantha. Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah. First of all, I'm a huge supporter of the Givers Gain chapter, even though I am in the Achievers chapter. And the fact that you and aren't you and Michael in the same chapter,
Yes.
right? So the fact that one chapter can have two, coaches in it is a great example, and that intrigued me. Also, the fact that because I actually, don't tell him, it'll hurt his feelings, but I was planning on going to Michael's session. But when I heard Adam explain his session, I was interested because I'm very interested in to see what your take on listening is, because that is a part of what I do as well.
Great. Welcome. Awesome.
So I'll say something real quick, Adam.
Yeah, Fran.
Yeah, so just because you're in our chapter isn't the main reason I chose this, is because I've noticed as I'm getting older that my ability to listen is getting worse. So anything you can teach me to help me be able to like read something and hear something at the same time again would be really helpful because
Right.
I feel like so much, especially on Zoom, we lose so much of that interaction because somebody's over here chatting in the chat and then somebody's speaking. And so what did that person that was speaking say? It's gone.
Yeah.
So that would be really, really helpful for me for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Zoom is tough. I Zoom is very tough. It's really hard to concentrate on the speaker and the chat at the same time. I actually, like I said, I can't do it. I have to either concentrate on the speaker or the chat. Um, there are people who can, and God bless them. But It's a very tough technology, and it's really evident that the technology was designed to extend speakers and not really thinking about listeners and their experience, which is why it's been kind of a catastrophe for education in post COVID. Um, how many? Fran mentioned that, right, as she's getting older, and I feel the same way. But how many of us in general feel like our ability to pay attention and listen has changed in recent years? Yeah, lots of us, right? Um, Anybody feel like it's getting better? Chris, you're getting better. All right, that's awesome. You're, I think maybe alone, in thinking it's getting better. Um, so, okay. And what I'm hearing is, as many of you said, listening is a big part of what we do in our jobs. And so thinking about listening is important to what we do for those jobs, but also outside of them, right? Like that's the main part of what a relationship is talking and listening to another person. So how many of us actually have been taught how to listen? Notably, none of us, right? Um, we haven't been taught how to listen. Okay, Carol, you've been taught. Yes, of course you've been taught, Carol. That's your job to teach people how to listen. um, but very few of us, and notably, it's like it's not one of the basic skills taught in school. When teachers say listen, what they mean is obey, right? They mean sit down and be quiet, right? They don't mean how do you do the thing of listening. Um, yeah. So, okay, great. All right, let's move on. Um, to begin, I want to offer a provisional kind of simple definition of listening. By listening, I'm going to suggest is a a form of intentional focused attention to another, right? It's intentional. You make a decision and then you have to focus your attention on another. So initially, right away, we can say that listening is not quite the same thing as hearing. Hearing can be passive. It can be the passive receipt of sound. In fact, we can hear without listening, and probably almost always do. We hear lots of things, but they don't rise to the level of attention. Listening, however, involves intention and effort. I want to be clear about that, or really emphasize the fact that listening is effortful. We work to listen. And one of the things that our hearing impaired and deaf friends teach us is that one can be an excellent listener without hearing, right? Hearing impaired and deaf folks are often very good listeners because they can't rely on hearing. So listening is one way that we attend to others. And I'll just say this very briefly. I kind of think it's one way that we do that, but it's not the only way. There are other ways of being attentive and attending to others that aren't listening, but listening is a good example of attending. And to go back to what I said earlier, listening is work. It's attending and focusing the mind, and this focusing involves working, which is to say, in a sense, all listening is active, but active listening workshops also signal that listening involves skills. We can be better and worse listeners by virtue of the skills and attitudes that we develop in relationship to it. So it's like a sport or other kinds of training. We can exercise and develop our listening muscles and skills. Listening does involve risks. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why lots of people don't listen or don't listen well. Listening involves opening ourselves up to another person, and that's a risk. We might hear something we don't want to hear. We might hear something that we wish we hadn't heard. And so there's a risk. We also listen because it's a pleasure. So I don't want to say it's all work and all risk. Listening is a pleasure. It's a thing we do that for fun. for play and creativity and surprise. Listening is how we create and deepen relationships with other people. And also, then, like a sport, there's a pleasure in developing your listening skills, um, like building your listening muscles. That's also fun, which is why, athletes play their games in part because they're fun to do. Like it's enjoyable to exercise those muscles. So that's the kind of simple definition that I want to offer you for listening, as a way to begin to think about the question of distraction. And distraction, offer the definition of distraction is the unwanted intrusion into our focused attention, right? It's an unwanted intrusion into our effortful attending to another. And I want to be really clear, in part because I'm going to stick with my opening announcement, right? That listening is not a personal failing, right? And I want to do that in part by distinguishing distraction, that unwanted intrusion, from the mind's normal and healthy inclination towards free association, wandering, daydreams, creativity, playing. This normal, healthy inclination towards free association, this is what the human mind does. And thank goodness. And as an aside, I'll just say, I kind of think that non-humans do this too. If you ever watch animals, they like if you pay attention to them long enough, they do a lot of playing around, looking around, singing. Um, and so I think that maybe non-humans do this too, but we don't know for sure. I know that for me and other humans, free association is an important thing. It leads to creativity, it leads to surprise and inspiration. So I want to distinguish daydreaming and the mind's desire to free associate from distraction, and say distraction doesn't come from lack of discipline over our mind, and it's not a personal failing. Instead, we need to look for sources of distraction outside of ourselves in the external world. I'm going to offer you two models for thinking about the sources of distraction. The first model I'm calling the mental energy model. And this is a model for thinking about all the ways in which we have capacity demands on our mind. There's so many things asking for our attention and focus. And listening is in competition with those things. So this is a kind of basic addition and subtraction model. What are the sources of stress or demands on my mental energy that compete with the effort I need to attend and listen? These things might be personal, like health and family, our health, family's health, things that are going on in our day-to-day lives, our immediate work environment. They might be social and economic, bigger than us, right? So inflation and the cost of our needs and wants, the status of the job market, the ways in which things feel increasingly frustrating as they become bureaucratized. Like I'm required to, do this thing with my bank, but I call customer service and I get somebody who can't do the thing, and then they switch me to another person who also can't do the thing. So it's my responsibility, but I can't do the thing. But I can't also get to anyone who can. So this is increasingly frustrating. And no matter what your political position is right now, politics is really loud. And so that's also affecting our ability to pay attention. And then there are global things like war and climate change. So there are all kinds of things that are competing with our ability to listen. And one of the ways we might understand our sense of distraction and inability to listen is that our minds are anxious, right? There are other parts of my life that are demanding my attention. And those parts are overriding the part of me that wants to pay attention and listen. Now, in a sense, other than the details, there's nothing new about contemporary life. Historically, at least since the beginning of industrial society, people have generally managed these stressors. Though once you start adding them up, it's kind of amazing we can concentrate at all, given all of the competing demands that we have. And that's a testament to the resiliency of the human mind. So there's this model, and I think it's true, but there's also something new happening that I think is really essential to us understanding what's going on and why we're having such a hard time listening and paying attention, and why we're feeling more distracted. And this is various people, scholars and activists, are calling attention to what they're just calling the engagement economy, or maybe other people are calling the attention economy, right? And this economy is about the new industries that have emerged to direct and extract our attention for profit. These are the companies like Meta, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Google, all of the big tech companies that really want our attention, and they're extracting our attention for their profit. And this is really, really quite new, even though it does have a history. So that history starts probably around the middle of the 20th century, right after World War II, as in the transformations of advertising as consumer society grew after the war, and new technologies were developed for reaching mass audiences. My parents are the first group of people who were raised on TV. Before that, there was no TV, right? There was no mass audience in the same way that there was in the 20th century. And now we don't even have that. All of these things are fractured into micro markets. But there was the development of a mass audience. And the question for advertising became, how do we capture consumer attention in this new sea of images, in this new technology and social context? How do we engage them and draw them in and direct their attention? And whole fields of marketing, psychology, and cybernetics were developed to understand and perfect this advertising. So we see this over the end of the 20th century. It's accelerated in the 90s by the invention of the internet and the World Wide Web. And then it explodes in the early aughts with the invention of smartphones in particular, cell phones generally, but smartphones in particular, social media and streaming. And now AI is being marketed as the thing that will make all of this even more efficient and profitable. And this attention economy or engagement economy works by constantly soliciting, engaging, and directing our attention for profit, primarily to sell advertising space and media commodities. Like, let's not forget that Facebook is firstly about selling advertising. That's what they do. We might think as users that it's about creating communities. And for them, they're using our desire to create communities to sell things, right? And they do that by using the technology to produce reaction and engagement. And sometimes they call this capturing eyeballs, which, if you think about it, is a pretty grisly kind of image, capturing eyeballs. Yes, exactly, Chris. And the thing to know about this, or one thing to know about this, is that this doesn't work primarily by targeting your intellectual or aesthetic judgments. It's not really about what you think or what you find lovely. They don't primarily work through persuasion. Rather, these technologies are about basic physiological responses. particularly dopamine release, right? It's somewhat reductive, but still true to say that the body responds, your eye responds before your mind makes sense of your response. And so the moral and aesthetic judgments you develop out of out of these things are really ways of making sense of your bodily reactions. It also means that things like truth, knowledge, democracy, those things covered by the First Amendment, these things only matter to the tech companies, the social media companies. They only matter if they produce engagement. And unfortunately, they don't produce engagement very well. They're too cerebral. Things that work much better are really base emotions like hate, fear, panic, and lust, including the lust for luxury and wealth. These are much better at activating your dopamine response and capturing your eye, even for a second, right? Because the algorithms that they use, which organize the content for you, track how long you pay attention to a thing and whether or not you pay attention to other things like it. And if so, they start feeding you more things to keep your attention. These algorithms are now part of our search engines, our news feeds, our social media feeds. They're part of our streaming media, and they structure AI bots, right? Which is why AI bots could shape themselves in relationship to their user. This is really, explodes around smartphones, because with smartphones, we're always available for a notification. We're always available for an email, for a text, for a phone call, for a social media posting. There's no outside. There's no outside to work. There's no outside to politics. There's no outside to social groups or school or family. And most importantly, there's no outside to the social media algorithms. We're never off the clock with these things, which is one of the reasons why smartphones and social media are really terrible for mental health, especially for adolescents, because we actually do need time away. Even if school is terrible, even if the social cliques at school are terrible. When I was a kid, you still got to go home, right? There's still someplace else. And for kids today, they never get to leave the social environment because of the social media. And these things are literally addictive. So capturing eyeballs and base emotions, these produce dopamine responses. And those are physiological responses that your body comes to anticipate and desire. In case you didn't hear, there was a recent ruling I think in Georgia about the fact that the parents of adolescents successfully sued Meta and other social media companies for generating social media addiction in their kids. And this is what we're talking about. So your body begins to anticipate and crave dopamine activation every few minutes. Over my head, I think this is the right direction. Over my head, in the background, I've got the dopamine reaction cycle, right? Anticipation, activity, reward, anticipation, activity, reward, right? Your actions are part of the anticipation and reward cycle of the dopamine. So your body wants more, even if intellectually you know better. So the engagement economy is having a really profound and profoundly bad effect on our attention and capacity for listening. And more people are feeling it. The work of attention, of focusing and listening is now competing with the body's anticipation of a notification, another dopamine hit. We anticipate the text. We anticipate the new post and the chemical responses they generate in our body. So also, our minds are competing against the corporate effort to direct our attention with the algorithms. They make money from our attention, and they're working very hard with billions of dollars of investment and whole armies of workers to capture and keep it. But this, the engagement economy, this I want to suggest is the most dangerous source of our distraction. Not our daydreams or the pleasure of watching a lizard outside our window. Distraction isn't about our self-discipline. It's about the use of technology for seizing our attention in the name of profit. Okay, so I've given you a lot to digest and none of it's good news. But the point of this workshop is to remind ourselves that we're not powerless. So before we move on, let's take a minute and take a deep breath and let it out. Okay. So, as I've been insisting, distraction isn't a personal failing. It's not a failing of our will or discipline. Not only is it normal for the human mind to wander, but we live in a society where distraction is increasingly produced and commodified. And we're fighting against that. And while we're waiting for the overthrow of the tech oligarchs and their evil plans, we can develop habits and practices for being less distracted and having fewer unwanted intrusions into our focus. How can we do this? We can do this by making changes to our everyday lifestyle and practicing self-care during and after moments when we're listening. So, what are some everyday lifestyle changes that we can make? These are lifestyle changes that work to disengage us from the engagement economy in our everyday life. I'm going to suggest there are two kind of sets of practices. It's not one practice, it's sets of practices. The first set is really about setting limits because we live in the context of the demand for limitlessness, right? We're always supposed to be available. There's endless opportunities for distraction. The TV is not what's on; it's the 100 million options on the streaming services, right? So we're always confronted with limitlessness, and we need to figure out ways to set limits for ourselves. In a sense, we need to treat ourselves like the children that we always are, right? Kids need limits. We need limits too, right? So, what are some practices for setting limits? We've all heard of the work-life balance. Let's practice that. Stop working when you're not at work, right? A personal example, I must stop email at dinner time. If not before, dinner time is a hard stop on email. Otherwise, email is in my head all night long, and I can't unsee what I saw, right? So emails will wait till tomorrow. Dinner time, email's done. Cell phone hygiene. Do you take time every day to be unplugged? Have time when you're completely free of your cell phone, when it's off, right? Including especially overnight. Limit the amount of time you spend on social media and online shopping. Sleep hygiene, right? No screens or visual media before bed, right? At least 30 minutes. So these are the kinds of limit settings that I'm talking about, like things where you literally say to yourself, I need to institute for myself and my family real limits so that we can get our minds back, right? From the demand for limitlessness. The other set of practices that I'm encouraging you to develop are practices for calming your nervous system, right? For getting that nervous system that's been constantly being activated or solicited by technology to slow down and calm itself. And one of the things I wanted to suggest is that there's a difference between calming and soothing. These aren't actually the same thing. Soothing is often things that actually soothe the addiction by feeding it, right? So for lots of people, scrolling social media is soothing. Watching TV is soothing. Listening to loud music, online shopping, online pornography, or cruising. These things for lots of folks are soothing practices. They make us feel better, but they partly make us feel better by feeding the addiction. And I'm not going to pathologize all those things, right? Because we also do need to feel better sometimes, right? But it's important to distinguish them so that we can make good decisions about also cultivating calming practices. Calming practices are different. They work on literally calming down the nervous system. So what are some examples of those? Taking a walk, especially if you walk out in nature. Nature almost immediately calms your nervous system. Exercise, meditation, or spiritual practices. Reading a novel, particularly if you read a novel that's a physical book, the screen actually is less good for calming your nervous system because it is a screen. But a physical book, a physical novel, that's really calming, in part because you actually have to slow down and turn the page, right? Even if you're kind of skim reading, you have to slow down and turn the page. Talking with friends, playing board games, enjoying art, singing, taking a nap. These things actually calm you rather than soothe you. Um, but importantly, to calm, you have to get rid of the cell phone. The cell phone, if you're taking a walk and you've got your cell phone with you, you're not actually getting away from the thing that's activating you all the time. So let's take a minute and chat with each other. How many of us already have calming practices that we do? And anyone want to share them? Well, how many of us have a calming practice? All right, some of us do. What do people do for their calming practices?
I use something called the Calm app if you haven't ever tried it.
Hmm.
It has all kinds of things, everything from getting yourself to stop thinking about what's going on with your day and what you have to do tomorrow. Um, you can listen to things that distract your mind
Hmm.
in order to flush out those things. But I
Hmm.
use it a lot at night to sleep and to meditate.
Yeah.
Because I find that for me, it has to be guided for me to be able to get it done. So
Hmm.
I've used it for a really long time, like, quite a few years.
Great.
And I think for me, it's effective. And it also tracks how consistent you are.
Hmm.
Um, and if you go back, you can kind of look and see, yeah, that day, maybe I didn't do so well or whatever. And I forgot to do my, meditation or whatever. So
Yeah.
it tracks your consistency, but it really works for me.
Great. Right. Great. Sergio, you want to offer something? Nope. You're muted. You're muted.
Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Samantha. I know you raised your hand first.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
I um I do mindfulness too. I meditate, just think about what I'm thankful for. I have a spirit board at home
Ah,
that in the mornings I'll look at it, just, I'll add things to it. Just I am thankful, I am responsible,
uh-huh.
and that helps me get my morning going and clear my mind.
That's great. That's a great practice. Samantha.
I read about 55 books a year. I found that with my job, it's kind of high stress. If I
Hmm.
don't read after work, then I'm thinking of work even in my sleep. So
Yep.
reading helps me those thoughts with something else.
Right.
I also will take moments throughout the day. I'm blessed to live on 10 acres with 13 mountain ranges that I can see. So nature's always good for me.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just looking out my window, and other times it's actually stepping outside of the house to
Uh-huh.
enjoy nature. So those are the things that I do to calm.
That's great. Laura.
Uh, I also live on several acres of land, and I always eat my breakfast and my dinner outside.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and kind
That's
of watch the
beautiful.
sunrise and the sunset,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And now's the time to do it, right? Like when the mornings and evenings are still so pleasant.
It's really nice.
Right. Yeah, wonderful. Kathy, want to share?
Yes, I like to do meditation both at night and in the evening. And I also set my alarm every day at 11:11 and meditate for a few minutes then. So,
Oh,
yeah,
that's a great idea. It's a great idea.
evidently
Fantastic.
a lot of people meditate at 11:11, so it's supposed to be more
Uh-huh.
powerful, I
Yeah,
guess.
great. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things I wanted us to realize and share with each other is that many of us are already have some things going, things to build on in developing a calming practice that will help with our ability to disengage and focus better and listen better. But if you're having a hard time either getting started or sustaining those practices, consider consider a coach or a trainer to work with. So I'm going to give a little shout out to some of the health and wellness practitioners. Laura is also here, another Curious Gain health and wellness practitioner. So Kiki does Ripple. He's a medical qigong practitioner. Sarah does yoga therapy. Jamie does energetic healing, including sound baths. Keith is a light touch chiropractor, and Adrian does curated wellness in a variety of ways, and as the owner of Center for Self Care. So there's a variety of people in Giver's Game, but I'm sure in all across BNI who can work with you, and as well as me, can work with you to develop practices for exploring your lifestyle practices for calming your nerves, calming your nervous system, and being able to focus and attend better. Chris and Laura both had their hands up at different points. Do either one of you want to say anything right now? Anything, Chris?
Yeah, just a very, very small change that I made was almost kind of using your terms, going from soothing to calming. Um, I got into the habit of anytime I would go for a walk, either, in nature at a park, going to the store, anything like that. Or if I was in a store walking around, I would always listen to a podcast, something like that, right? And so I just took that away, right? I
Mm-hmm.
took away listening to anything and just walking into the space and feeling and absorbing the natural sound and things like that. So that was just a really small thing that I did to kind of make a change. But I think that defining those terms and knowing the difference between the two of them, as far as the way that you've defined it, is pretty important.
Thank you. Yeah, I do too. I mean, I too used to walk around listening to music and listening to other things, and decided that that wasn't actually working for me, right? That I needed to not listen to those things. So even if I'm walking on the street where it's car noise, that's better than having earbuds in, in terms of being able to calm me, where the practice actually made it more important or more meaningful to me. There was a question about BJ's use of calming app. In a way, calming app is a kind of technological coach, right? So there's a way in which what BJ is doing is you found your own coach. It's called the calming app, right? And that's great. That's also an option. It's finding a technology coach for you. The
And also,
question
I
of
use earbuds, but not a
yeah,
screen.
yeah, that makes a huge difference. Right.
Yeah.
You use it earbuds and not a screen. Cool. Wonderful. Okay, so let's get into let's keep going. So those are the things we've been talking about are the kind of lifestyle things, changes that we can make or in an institute for ourselves for disengaging ourselves slowly from the engagement economy, though we can't fully, right? We're working. We have to be engaged, right? So there's no complete separation, but we can learn how to and develop ways of not being always attached to it. But there are also things that we can do while listening to be better at listeners, better listeners, and less distracted listeners. Now, I know that listening some often comes at us unexpectedly. Someone comes up to you and says, "Can you? I need to talk. Do you have a minute to listen to me? Or I need to tell you something." Right. So sometimes we don't have time to calm ourselves, or we don't have time for the listening. But if we do have time before the listening, one thing you can do to be less distracted while you're listening is take a minute to find your calm, right? It doesn't have to be very long, 30 seconds, a minute, right? If you have a space, if you're in a space that you control, maybe turn out the lights, close your eyes, take some time to do some deep breathing, just things that you can do for a minute to find your calm. That will help you be less distracted. Another thing to do before listening is to remove even the possibility of distraction. So not just remove distractions, but remove the possibility of distraction, because we've all become habituated to the distractions. I know for myself, how many of us find ourselves at various moments, I'm completely guilty of this, distracted because I'm worried I'm missing a notification on my cell phone. Is someone texting me? Yeah, right. Um, I mean, no one's texting me, right? I'm not that popular, but I'm worried that someone's texting me. So already in my head is the anticipation of a distraction. So one of the things we need to do is remove as much as possible, even the possibility of distraction, so that we can begin to release ourselves from the anticipation for it. A big one is turning off your cell phone. Silencing is okay, but if you can put it in airplane mode so that there's literally no notifications coming to your phone, that means you're not worried that there are notifications on your phone, because there aren't, because it's in airplane mode. They'll all still be there afterwards. We all know this, right? But literally doing something like airplane mode or turning it off helps us begin to let go of that anticipation. Cell phones must be out of sight, right? We know out of sight is out of mind, and this is especially true with cell phones. There's some interesting studies about the literal physical distance between a student and their cell phone corresponds to the degree to which they comprehend concepts and retain what they've learned. Chris, it's evil. And the mere presence of a cell phone on the table when you're meeting with someone is a distraction. You can't overcome that through an act of will, unless maybe you're an advanced monk. I'm not even sure advanced monks can do it. Yesterday I had my cell phone on my desk while I was doing this, and I found myself looking over at the cell phone at this moment, and I was like, oh, I need to have the cell phone in another room. You can't even be in my office with me. So one thing to do to get rid of the possibility of distraction is put that cell phone somewhere where you're not looking at it. And then, of course, you can do things like put a sign on your door saying, if you have a door, right, put a sign on the door saying, in a meeting, right? So that you're not worried about someone knocking at the door and interrupting you. So that all these ways, then you can be more fully in the encounter with another. And then for those of us who do listening regularly, we know you got to get physically comfortable so that you reduce your body's distractions, right? If you're sitting in a chair that cuts off the blood flow to your legs, right, that means that you're paying attention to the fact that your legs are going numb, and not paying attention to what's being said. So those are some things we can do if we have moments to prepare ourselves for when we're going to be listening. And then there's while listening. And I want to say here that my motto is that focus is always refocusing. Focus isn't a state, it's an activity that we do. It's like every other meditative practice, right? If you meditate, you know, your mind will wander, and what you have to do is bring it back. So focus is always refocusing. So if you find your mind wandering, which is a natural thing for it to do and inevitable, gently bring it back. Bring it back to what you're focused on. You probably haven't missed much. It hasn't been that long. One way to notice is that your mind is wandering is that, at least for me, my gaze will start to drift away from the person that I'm listening to. And Chris, yes, one thing to do is just bring your gaze back to the other person and their face, right? But don't blame yourself for getting distracted. Blaming yourself for getting distracted attaches you to the distraction rather than just letting go of that distraction and coming back. Similarly, keep coming back to your breath and body. Remember to breathe and relax. Notice when you clench or stop breathing, or notice when you feel discomfort. And when you do, notice them and then relax. Return to your breath and return your attention. So focus while listening is always refocusing. And the thing that I think we don't pay enough attention to is that after listening, particularly if the listening was difficult or intense, we need to recover so that we're not undone and overwhelmed by that listening encounter, so that we can come back and listen again. Listening, as I said earlier, is work. So what do you do after working out? You hydrate. You eat something that is good for you. You take a bathroom break, right? Those are things that we should do. We should take care of our bodies after listening. And then also check in with yourself. How did that affect me? How did it affect me emotionally, energetically, intellectually, physically? How did my body react and when did it react? And what should I learn from my body's reactions? So checking in with yourself, it may happen over time. It may not be immediate, but give yourself time immediately if you can, if you have the opportunity, check in with yourself. And then finally, yeah, Chris, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a really important thing to remember. And I love that you brought it up. So much so that that particular thing, the afterward, what do you call it? You call it the recovery afterwards, has gone into my meeting scheduling, right? So instead of if there's a meeting that involves a lot of listening or a Zoom meeting where you really have to focus, rather than scheduling the next meeting like 10 minutes afterwards, maybe you do it, you leave a half an hour in between those meetings. So you can do those things, you can do recovery, you can process, and then you can get ready for the next thing, rather than just doing back to back to back, because that really could have the possibility of draining you physically.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great,
and
that's a,
mentally.
yeah, that's a great scheduling trick, right? Like give yourself time after an intense meeting, a meeting that you know is going to be intense, to process, right? To take care of yourself, to check in with yourself. And then finally, release what you can, right? How did you feel? Do you need to cry, right? How do you need to let yourself feel and release the emotions of listening to someone? Or maybe you need to laugh, right? Maybe it was fun. Um, but maybe you need to talk to someone else who can help you process the emotions that you went through, or just because you spent time listening, now you need to share, right? And someone else can be the listener. And then, of course, practice your techniques for calming, right? The techniques that you're developing and have already developed. So take time after listening to recover. Take care of your body, check in with yourself, and release what you can. Okay, so next steps, right? Calming your mind and developing a capacity to stay focused while listening are ongoing practices like an exercise. Life and professional coaching, like the kind I offer, can help you develop your own practice for calming, for releasing yourself from sources of distraction and becoming a better listener at work and in your relationships. If you'd like introductions to any of the Givers Gain practitioners who do work around calming your nervous system, please reach out to me. I'm happy to set you up or search for them through BNI Connect. But if you'd like to talk more about what we've discussed today and think about whether or not coaching is good for you or would be a useful thing for you, feel free to reach out to me using this QR code over me for a 60-minute consult. Or you can also use this code to schedule a BNI one-to-one, because I would love to talk with you more about what I do and also what you do, and see if there are ways that we can support each other in the process. And that is my workshop for today. Hope that you got some good things out of it, and would be happy to have any feedback you have about how things went for you. I know we have only a couple more minutes before Chrissy's going to pull us back, but if you have anything you want to say now, please feel free.
I
All
really
right.
appreciate just the overview, as far as your process. It sounds different than other processes I've heard, and so thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Chris.
I got a lot of really good tips from you, Adam. Looking forward to having a more in-depth conversation with you
Uh-huh.
about some of those listening techniques and how I can implement them a little bit better as my brain is changing as it ages, because I know that that's been a struggle for me over the last probably year or so.
Yeah,
I've noticed that big change. So, yeah, would love to figure that out.
great,
Sure.
great. Yeah,
I
Because I
like
get
how
so
you,
distracted with all the things going on, the
yes,
BNI, my business, the family, it's just can be a bit much some days for
it
sure.
is for sure.
I like how you brought listening into kind of like how it's actually a workout
Yeah.
and you actually need a break from it. And so
Mhm.
you can, I never thought about how you can become overstimulated from listening
Yeah,
and how
for
to bring
sure.
your body back and everything. So I thought that was really a really good piece to take into consideration.
Thank you. Right.
I agree with that. And as soon as you said it, I thought of my mother.
Uh-huh.
And I need, because there's a lot of like releasing and recovering that I need to learn how to do after getting off the phone with her.
Oh
It's
yeah.
emotional, sometimes draining because you have to listen.
Yeah.
She wants you just to listen. You try to
Yeah.
provide a solution or a fix, and then it's not good for her. So I've learned to not do that. But because I'm very empathetic, it
Yeah.
wears on because I know that there's a solution and it's typically very easy, but she doesn't,
Yeah. She's not
it
talking to you for solutions. Right.
no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Such a good
So,
point, Samantha. Such a good point.
Yeah.
so I, you know, I
Right.
just have a hard time with those.
Right. Samantha, I know I didn't really talk about the thing that you were most interested in, which was the difference between kind of directed listening or goal-oriented listening and other
Mhm.
listening. That was my other workshop idea. I wish I had done it, but
Well,
that'll be
no, we
my
got
next.
next year.
That'll be my next workshop idea. My next
Yeah,
workshop.
next spring
So
training.
yes, exactly.
I've done a lot of those, and so it's sometimes you can be very active listening for, the connection versus the solution.
Yeah.
So I've worked on that really hard. Because you miss a lot of details when you're trying to already respond right
Yep.
before they're done talking. So
Yep. Great.
no,
Thank
this was
you.
great. I liked it. It's completely different than what I expected. Thank you.
Oh, great. Absolutely.